No, they usually
individual.
Hello.
Okay. All right, we are ready as soon as our AV folks are ready. Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry. Ready when you are. Okay. Are we live? Oh, okay. All right, we don't need a countdown or anything? Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this Finance Subcommittee of the Brockton School Committee, September 28th, 2021. We have 3 items on our agenda this evening. The first being community input on ESSER 3 funding plan. Then we'll have an executive session, and then any other business that needs to come before the committee. And I know the mayor does have one item that he wants to address immediately.
Well, the first thing, ladies and gentlemen, if we could take a moment of silence. The city lost a dedicated public servant today, Mr. Hank Tartaglia. The Tartaglia family, of course, used to own George's Cafe, but Hank was the sitting chair of the License Commission, and he passed away early this morning. So if we could take a moment of silence, and our prayers and thoughts are with the Tartaglia family. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so the first item, the community input on ESSER 3, just to give a brief overview, and then the superintendent's going to give a PowerPoint to give a little more detail on that, and then ultimately we'll have a period for the public comment part of the meeting. So basically, you know, we've got some federal funds coming in. We need to create a plan within some guidelines of how we intend to use those funds, and that has to be submitted. And so one of the things we have to do is again, seek out public input on the use of these funds. So the superintendent's going to provide some information about the different categories that money could be put into. And then, you know, following his presentation, then we will open it up to hear from members of the public who wish to be heard on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. DiAugustino. So I'm going to stand up. So, am I good on this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to give an overview of ESSER 3, which is the third stimulus package that came out. It's actually the largest one. So, who's clicking for me? Says you can click. So it's under the American Rescue Plan of 2021. ESSER 3 provided nearly $122 billion to states to support the safe reopening of schools and sustaining safe operations. And then obviously putting things in place that we meet the academic, social, emotional, and mental health needs of our students. Brockton, this is just the Brockton Public Schools, is receiving $34 million in these funds. These funds can be used, they haven't been touched yet. They were not needed for this year's budget. We were able to get through this year's budget with ESSER 2 and Student Opportunity Act money. The good news about these funds is that we can use them all the way to December of 2024. So in order to receive the funds, we must develop a plan that outlines how we intend to address students' academic, social, emotional, mental health needs, as well as the opportunity gaps that existed before COVID, and obviously they were obviously increased by COVID with obviously the remote learning that is not the ideal way to teach students. So the state Department of Education through the federal government, they give very specific areas where you have to spend this money. We cannot deviate from the bulleted areas I'm going to go over with you and just spend the money any way we feel. It has to fit into these categories. So So the first one is expanding the use of high-quality aligned instructional materials, that's curriculum, and then obviously providing the professional development needed for teachers and staff. Work with professional development for teachers and administrators in the area of culturally responsive teaching. Screening assessments associated with professional development, that's basically assessing students where they are and seeing where their gaps are and putting things in place. So have to continuously assessing students, see where they land. And this is not all about standardized tests. This is about students' everyday work in the classroom, which is what I see is the most important thing, what the teachers see, dealing with students every day. More important than a standardized test is just the work that the teachers do every day, and those kind of assessments need to be put in place so we see where the gaps are. Expanding access to career technical education and innovation pathways. Expanding access to advanced placement courses, and then including in fees and teacher training. So basically, making sure that we're covering the cost for students to take the AP exams, covering the cost for students that want to go into career and technical education areas, areas like, graphic design, automotive, carpentry, those kind of things in tech ed area, which we all know those career paths are growing, and we have to do a better job preparing our students for that. You can also use the money to extend the school day and the school year. I'm sure the kids would be thrilled about this one. Prioritizing students' access to additional time by student needs. So this is the extended learning time schools where they add an hour or two to the day. This also could add time to the end of the school year. Instead of 180 days, we could have 185, 190. Those kind of things can be used with this money. Tutoring programs and support including early literacy tutoring. And this is training also our paraprofessionals. Developing and strengthening data cycles to facilitate informed student learning. Again, this is all about looking at data, looking where the students are struggling, really doing a deep dive into data, finding out what the students are really struggling with, whether it's math comprehension, whether it's identifying vocabulary to help them interpret a reading. So in open response questions, things like, so really looking deep into what the students are struggling for each one. Early college programs, now this is something that is very exciting. We're looking into adding early college program where students will actually take school classes through colleges, virtually now that that's the option, and they could earn up to at least an associate's degree starting in their junior year. And when they graduate, they would be able to graduate with an associate's degree, which would take care of and save people a lot of money. And they would be leaving pretty much high school with 2 years of college. So that's really expanding. That's high on the commissioner's list. It's also something that's really important for us, because I think that's a real benefit for our kids to be able to have 2 years of college after they graduate high school. This is an important one. We've been doing this for a while, is co-teaching and inclusion models for students with disabilities and making sure we're giving the proper professional development. That means that we're supposed to be educating students with disabilities in the least restrictive environment. So we want to make sure we have opportunities for those students to get into classes where they can thrive, access to advanced placement classes, access to making sure what I talked about earlier, the career and tech ed path. So those kind of things we can use the money for as well. Acceleration academies, these are school vacation camps, academic camps during school vacation. We can also do these on Saturdays as well. Summer learning programs, we actually used ESSER II money last year, so all our academic learning programs that used to cost a fee, last year were free using ESSER II. We hope to do that again with ESSER III, is any academic program that we offer in the summer, or any of these vacation schools we offer, or Saturday schools, as far as academic support, need to basically be free for families. Hiring more academic support staff. These are coaches that work with teachers to improve instruction. Interventionists, which help with behavior issues. Student teacher residency programs for our student teachers to keep them in the system once they graduate, and obviously our paraprofessionals. In here, it's, not many school systems have teachers' assistants. We have MTAs, they're called. They need to have a college degree, and these are young people that come out of school and want to get their teaching certificate, so we hire them as MTAs, and so they would need the training as well. Bringing more diversity to our educator workforce. Increasing high-quality common planning time for teachers and the academic support staff. That's time for teachers to meet together, usually after school, or if we can find time during the school to share best practices, to discuss the best ways to educate certain individuals. There's a teacher, say if it's a math teacher that's really doing good things, and there's a student that's really struggling in English, but doing very well in math, and what is the math teacher doing for that child that the English teacher might be missing, where they can share best practices and how to best educate that student. So increasing personnel and services to support holistic student needs. This again is guidance and adjustment counselors, nurses, psychologists, and social workers. So this is another thing that the school committee did last year. We added 15 adjustment counselors to last year's budget. We added, I believe, 6 interventionists. We have added nurses, obviously, because it was important with students coming back and we're still in the middle of COVID. We have increased psychologists and social workers as well, but the big piece is the adjustment counselors, and that's been a huge help with this year. And then engaging our community partners to build capacity around educators and support personnel to make sure we implement equitable and culturally responsible learning environments. That's working with all our community partners and creating more partnerships with our community partners that we don't currently have. Create transitional programs for students with mental health or behavior-related absences now that they're returning to school. And I'm going to be honest with you. It's been a rough coming back to school. Kids that have been out of school for close to 2 years, getting together, there's a lot of conflict, and we're dealing with it as best we can. You might see it on TikTok and social media, but it's, especially Brockton High, you're bringing 4,000 teenagers together. Our freshmen pretty much have not been, you're talking about you're taking freshmen that left the 7th grade and then went into remote learning, and a lot of kids, even when we came back last year hybrid and we came back full, a lot of students chose to stay home and stay on remote learning. So there's a lot of 7th graders that now have been placed out of 7th grade. Pretty much, I know they went to school remotely for 8th grade, but it's not the same as in person. And now they're in the 9th grade. That is a huge jump. We've always, 9th graders, and this is across the nation, we've always struggled with 9th graders, just failure rates, behavior, those kind of things, and now it's been magnified with, with the loss of that time in school. So it's like they jumped from 7th grade to 9th grade. And as somebody a graduate of Brockton High, I would not have done well jumping from 7th grade to 9th grade. So, there are issues. There's conflict. There's students that are really struggling that have a lot of loss at home and suffered through COVID. So now bringing them all back together, and we're having our struggles, but we're doing our best with our adjustment counselors, and we still have to hold kids accountable when dangerous behaviors happen, but we're doing our best to support them and get them through this very rough stage of coming back to school. Facilities, this is a big one, and when you see the survey that we did, improvement in our facilities, we have older buildings that really need renovations, especially the 4 old junior highs. Places like the Brookfield, the Ashfield, Hancock, there's a lot of cosmetic work that needs to go on there. New flooring, really a lot of work on ceilings, just a lot of cosmetic work. The buildings are solid. Few examples, we do have, the good thing about the ESSER 3 is We probably won't need to use a lot of it for Brockton High School because we have a grant in for Brockton High School to either renovate or build a new Brockton High School, and we'll get 80% reimbursement from the state for that. And we should know if we get into that program this November. So hopefully we get good news in that. But facilities was actually the top of the list with the survey results that people wanted to see some of this money go towards. And again, this is again building and strengthen partnerships with community-based organizations to increase student and family access to services, especially for mental and physical health and well-being. So that's pretty much the areas they give you that you're allowed to use this money for. Again, this money has not been touched. We'll get through this whole budget until June 30th of next year. 2022 without using any of the ESSER 3 money. And so, you know, those areas are where we're able to spend that money. The Student Opportunity Act is supposed to be funded again, where we received $22 million, and it's supposed to be funded again. So that puts us in a really good position. As you know, over the last several years, we've done nothing but cut programs, lay off teachers, lay off paraprofessionals, lay off a lot of different, cut programs and other things for kids. So that for the near future, those days are behind us. But we have to make sure that we spend this money wisely because, as we all know, money dries up and it's not going to be here forever. And we have to make sure we're able to sustain what we bring in. That's why it's very difficult when you get this much money. You just can't put it all towards personnel because it's very hard to sustain those, you know, those numbers when it all goes into personnel. And, you know, then when the money dries up, you have to start laying a lot of people off. We had 1,093 submissions. This has been open for almost a month, the survey. And this is important to get community feedback on how to best utilize ESSER 3 funds like tonight. So these the majority with students and families that responded. This went out to our students as well. Teachers were the second group. Our community stakeholders was the third group, and then followed by other educators and non-classroom staff. So I don't know how I'm going to read this, but I'll try.
Mike, this is just the...
Yeah, it's the same things that were listed that I just went through. So just to give you the top 5 facilities improvements was number 1. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So that was the top. Thank you, Jess. So facility improvements to create healthy and safe school environments. Hiring more academic support staff, including academic coaches, interventionists, student teacher residency programs, paraprofessionals was second. Tutoring programs. This was very successful last year. We had the virtual tutoring program after school. That's continuing this year. But now, you know, we really did need to do some of that in person as well, especially with early literacy. And that includes training paraprofessionals. This is, again, purchasing and expanded the use of high-quality, aligned instructional materials. This is around curriculum. As you know, still some of the books we have at high school level are still old and need to be phased out. We talked about this at our earlier meeting. So this is about expanding and getting high-quality instructional materials for our students and make sure the teachers get professional development on how to use it. And then increase in personnel to support the holistic student needs. And again, this was the guidance counselors, adjustment counselors, nurses, psychologists, and other social workers and these could be mentors as well that work with our students. So these were the top 5 choices. So we look forward to hearing from you. There's a microphone right here to my right. So please come up and feel free to give us your thoughts, your ideas about ESSER 3. Again, the money is good until and can be spent all the way to December of 2024. You have to. You're all set. All right.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this grand opportunity. I deeply appreciate the opportunity of allowing the community to have a voice here. So bear with me, I'm going to try to go down a list. So you spoke a lot about professional development and also holistic health. So I guess piggybacking and co-signing that we really need the staff to have trauma-sensitive care training, but not just the training where they just attend one time and then we hope that they've remembered everything, but something that kind of tracks how they're actually putting those policies into practice, and track how that's improving the social and emotional well-being of the student. Because a lot of the time when professional development is done, we don't ever really follow up, like how are they actually implementing those things? So that's one. Another thing is increasing the DEI office to, because there are so many levels of diversity, equity, and inclusion that is needed. And so seeing that this office would have to make sure that there's an equitable education that would have to oversee the curriculum, the representation, school culture and climate, including culturally appropriate food in the cafeteria, culturally responsive family engagement, and extracurricular activities for the students. So I think that this DEI office needs to expand to be able to, to have the capacity to be able to oversee all of these different areas. Let me back up, rewind a little bit on the trauma-sensitive care. I think in addition to the mental health professionals that you plan on bringing on board, I think there's always going to be a lack of trust from a parent perspective to allow the schools to kind of take ownership of their child's mental health. And so I think it's also equally important to kind of bring in other types of trainings, kind of like conflict management, emotional intelligence, and other things that can be so that the kids can learn from. And that way it's not really up to the school to really attend to their mental health, but also teach that child how to kind of tend to their own mental health as well, so that it's not, so that it's a collective effort and not just solely the responsibility of the school. But then also those professional development opportunities for staff should also be extended to the families, so that we're all practicing the same things, so that now that we've learned that parents kind of have to pick up where teachers leave off, we have to kind of understand what practices are being used, why they're being used, why they're important, and how do we implement them at home as well. The other thing, in terms of the partnerships the community partnerships that you speak about, I think it's really important to be very strategic about what these partnerships look like to ensure that these partnerships are supplementing the educational experience of the students. So for example, there were, historically, the budget has been cut so often that so many programs have been cut. I think that these partnerships should be restoring some of those programmings. So for example, home economics, financial literacy, I know that is taught at the high school, but it's more like an elective. It should be something that is offered more frequently. Also trades, computer and technical skills, especially now given our current environment. I think this is crucial for these programs to not only be implemented for the students, but again, also the families. And languages. Oftentimes, there are a lot of programs that help English language learners, but we don't offer for the dominant culture in society to learn other languages so that we can learn how to communicate with our neighbors. So if I wanted to learn Cape Verdean Creole or Haitian Creole so that I could communicate with my neighbors, that would also be a great program. So I just wanted to give examples of how the partnerships should really be supplementing the educational experience and restoring programs that have been cut before, or new innovative ways where it contributes to the mission and vision of BPS. And that's what I have so far. Sorry.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leona Martin, and I am the chair of the Education Committee at the Brockton NAACP. And I just had kind of like Evelise, I've just kind of made a list of things that we've been talking about that would be helpful for the community. in terms of our students. So the first one is we're just feeling like, although there are many mentorship programs within in the city, we actually gave out books the past couple of summers at the North Middle and West Middle schools. And we give out culturally enriching books, and that's been really great. The kids have loved it. But we were thinking, so there were many kids that were part of the two programs, but we just felt like there's probably so many other kids out there that could have utilized these books. So we're just thinking that, you know, more books, more mentorship programs for the kids so that we reach a bigger range of them. Because we felt like, you know, although like I said, we have the mentorship programs, but you can always have more. And I've actually talked to Mike about this in the past as well, that we do more mentorship. The other thing is around career development. And we feel like, while I know that you do a lot at the high school already, but we're feeling like we probably could do more, because all kids don't go to college. Many kids want to go to work when they leave high school. And we think that if there are people that are dedicated to provide one-on-one career coaching, you know, you can better support the kids in determining what they want to do once they leave school. And part of that may be, you know, to include more vocational kind of programs in the school, because those seem to be the areas where, you know, the kids that don't go to college, if they get into vocational careers, it's a great way for them to make a good living. Let's see, we talked about the books. And then the last thing we've been talking about is ways in which we can provide support to the parents. You know, so yeah, the kids have gone through a lot, but so have the parents. What can we do to provide and give them some self-care tips so that they can do what they do to support their families? Because it's been hard. I've talked to many parents who have struggled through this remote learning and are still struggling, and they just wish that somebody would do something for them. And I'm not sure what that is, and I'd be happy to work with Mike and others to try to figure out what those things are. We actually did provide a self-care program early on in the pandemic. Somebody that came and did some self-care tips. We didn't get a lot of people show up, but those that did come thought it was great. So maybe some things like that might be beneficial. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Larry Curtis. I am a resident here in Brockton, homeowner in Ward 6, and I just had a couple of things I just wanted to make you aware of going forward. First, Superintendent, I think it's very appropriate that you have pointed out any funds utilized to hire staff ultimately will evaporate, and it looks like we're talking about 2022, 2023, 2024 as having a flush of ability, but ultimately whatever is spent will result in potential reductions in forces later on in the system, barring a miracle. The other piece that I wanted to mention here is that last year the secondary education system did a district report on the Brockton school system, and a particular paragraph in the executive summary that struck me as very, very important to reinforce here in the school committee and its leadership basically said that evidence shows that the school committee and other district leaders, as well as school leaders, have not engaged in effective planning to promote continuous improvement practices and support an increase in student achievement. In addition, the school committee does not use disaggregated data on student outcomes to inform its work. As a result, critical decisions at the governance level are often made based on opinion and anecdotal information rather than evidence. While district leaders believe that their decisions were made at the best use of the funds available, stakeholders at all levels described in the system, a system that is not serving students well. What can you do to assure we as homeowners, taxpayers, business leaders in our community that you are going to do the right decisions with this $34 million windfall that is coming into our city? Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
My name is Alba, and I'm a homeowner. I'm a mother of 5 here in the community, as well as a nurse that works at Brockton Neighborhood Health Center at the Harm Reduction Clinic. And I wanted to specifically talk about the trauma that the children have experienced, both in the community, just coming from the Brockton community, but also just with all of that happened with the pandemic. And it's very important to address the trauma that they experience, as well as the parents. So to piggyback on what some of the others said, if we can be able to provide a training that infuses principles that can help the individuals that are helping our children to really understand the importance of the trauma-informed care in a way that it's implemented easily and daily, so that they can constantly think about, like, how can I be more trauma-informed in the way I approach this particular situation or that particular situation. I many times have conversations with individuals that, like, whether it's guidance, whether it's mentors or individuals that my kids are involved with, and there seems to be a knowledge gap in terms of, like, the cultural specific traumas that a lot of the children's experience. So I find that I'm spending more time trying to educate them and help them understand the day-to-day, as opposed to having them be able to have that knowledge coming in. So I think that that's very important. I think that also with a lot of the virtual learning, it's important to be able to to provide training to be able to help children understand how to appropriately use technology, including, whether it's bullying online or whether it has to do with what they access on computers, because there's so many times that they're Googling or doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and we do it as adults that we have short attention spans and end up, going into different browsers and things like that. So I think being able to incorporate training on how to use technology and the dangers of the World Wide Web is also very important, so that our children can be aware that there are creeps and predators out there that could potentially be communicating with our children through the computers. So it's good that they got access to these computers, but how could they learn how to use them in a way that is safe and effective and not dangerous for them? I also feel like educating children on substance use education as well, and awareness about that is super important, and reducing the stigma in the community around substance use and in mental health. With a lot of the different cultures, there's a huge stigma around engaging in mental health services and substance use services. So to be able to incorporate education to remove the stigma on those specifically, which is a challenge with a lot of the cultures that we serve, whether it has to do with the Cape Verdean, Hispanic, or the Haitian community. There's a lot of stigma that needs to be removed with that. And I also feel like it's important, like, if we're helping to prepare the children for the workforce and things like that, we also need to include financial literacy in the education system as well, so that they can know how to manage the money and how to be able to be more productive with the knowledge that they have when they leave schooling.
Thank you.
Evening, Connor Units, a parent and a homeowner. Thank you very much for this presentation. This was very helpful. One of the things that struck me was the ability to use some of these funds for early college, which I think is a really tremendous opportunity for the kids in the system to get a couple of years of that and earn that associate's degree while they're still here in Brockton. I know that there are significant studies out there that show that kids that do this benefit tremendously, either because they decide that college is not for them, or because they can use their associate's degree, or because they're just cutting down the cost of education and being able to earn their bachelor's in 2 years afterwards. So if there's a way to use some of those funds for that program, but do it in a way that it doesn't just benefit a class or two until the funds dry up, but lays the groundwork for an entire generation of kids to do that program, I think that would be tremendous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you all for your comments. It's much appreciated, and like we said, it's important that you can't spend the money all on staff. You can't overstaff, because that comes with high costs. The cost of health insurance alone, it's got to be put into programs. You have to lay off programs. You don't have to lay off early college programs. Things that that we really need to put in for kids. That really help them not only while they're with the Brockton Public Schools, but obviously beyond. And that's what's important. And I want to thank Mr. Curtis for bringing up the district review. Following up on the district review, as soon as that came out in June of 2020, I entered into a MOU with Commissioner Riley, the first of its kind, between the school district and the Commissioner of Education, for the improvement of instruction, improvement of academic standards here. And the school committee has supported that 100%, so I appreciate that. And I work with DESE every week. They support us with extra grant money that are really helping us drive and improve instruction, and obviously that in return improves the student achievement and closes the achievement gap. So I thank him for bringing that up. But I appreciate your comments. They're very helpful. And again, it's great to have this money, but it has to be spent the right way.
Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one other thing. I have to leave in a few minutes, but I can't go without saying I wanted to commend and congratulate you, Superintendent Thomas, for the work that you've done with Kathleen Moran and all the teachers that you guys have hired, and it's a very diverse mix of teachers, so we're happy to see that, and I just wanted to say
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And again, I want to thank on behalf of the school committee for everybody being here tonight, taking time out of your evening to share your thoughts on this with us, and kind of echoing the comments of the superintendent, and the discussions the committee's been having with other ESSER funds and also the SOA Act money. Not only do we have to be careful, what funds we use where, because again, right, we don't want to bring staff on and then get back into this laying off, but also we have to make sure that we're investing it in ways, to Mr. Curtis's point, that are going to improve student achievement. And so that's been the focus of the committee with all the money that's come in thus far, including the SOA. And hopefully that will be longer term funding that we can rely on. I want to thank the public for your, again, I know I said it a minute ago, but just for coming and just sharing your thoughts. I mean, it's, we're used to coming and being on camera, but that's, a little nerve-wracking for a lot of people, and I really appreciate when people do make the time to do that. And I do want to make sure that I thank BCA and Tracy Lopes from IT for being here to make sure that the technology piece of this all happened this evening. The technology is a little easier when we're at the high school, and it's built in better, so we're kind of, when they're remote broadcasting like this, it brings new challenges, and so I appreciate you guys being here and making this happen. Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to echo the sentiment. So my title is mayor, but I also serve as chair of the school committee. We have really dedicated folks on this school committee, but to come here tonight on a Tuesday night where you could be home, that speaks volumes. Know that we will be spending this money wisely, appropriately, fiscally responsible. This is a group of folks led by Superintendent Thomas that thought outside the box to acquire school buses. That's saving $4 million. That was for phase one. Next year, we'll acquire the rest. That's $4 million we're going to be able to spend on the students and the staff. So everybody that spoke tonight, know that we're taking that under consideration. I support everything that was said tonight as the mayor and as a dad of 3 kids, and 2 of them in the Brockton Public Schools. So we all hear what you're saying. We're better together. We need to continue to stay the course. This is a windfall of money, but we would be doing a dereliction of duty if we just spent it all in one windfall. That doesn't make any sense as a fiscally responsible elected officials. So thank you again on behalf of the school committee for being here, and know that everything that was shared tonight is expressed in a manner that's going to benefit BPS and ultimately the next generation, which is the boys and girls. So kudos to everybody for being here. Thank you.
Mr. Minicello.
I'd also like to mirror that. Every one of the suggestions was basically an excellent suggestion. Many of the suggestions are tied into our previous portion of the meeting, especially with regard to adding programs dealing with career. Southeastern Regional is a school years ago that was easy to get into, and now it's a school that's in high demand, and it's limited in terms of the number of students that can go. So we understand that career training and trades are very valuable today, because when you talk to people out in the real world, the trades, there's a tremendous opportunity in the trades. Students are being for some reason shown away from that, but there's opportunity for trades that people just do not want to do, and we need to recognize that, and that's a very good lucrative opportunity for many students. But tied into that is space and facilities. We need to be able to provide some quality space in order to provide the support to add those types of programs. With respect to what Mr. Curtis was saying, at our last Finance Subcommittee meeting, the committee basically wants to review all of the additional positions that we have been adding and make sure those align with answering and making sure that the concerns that were outlined in that review are being met, so that the money and the hiring that we're doing is effective. It's not just hiring bodies. We need to make sure that the money and the positions are going to fill those holes. And when I say holes, the holes that in many respects were created due to a lack of funding, and now we have the funding, so we have to be smart. And we certainly hear you loud and clear, and we're all in agreement on that. So the financial literacy, well, we've had financial literacy programs here, but sort of in pockets, not available for every student, and that is absolutely, in this world, as we all know, an area that needs to expand. But so many good suggestions. Another one hitting my mind is guidance. The guidance department. Those departments are so overworked. When it comes to the seniors getting ready to move on and try to find where they want to go. That's another resource that our students, especially students who do not have family or close affiliates who have gone to college. We have a lot of students in the city that's the first time, and they need some support in terms of getting them prepared and be aware of the opportunities that are out there for them. So those are the types of sort of supports that need to be put in place. But excellent suggestions, and we hear you loud and clear, and we will work to make sure that we are spending this money effectively, because the state is watching. Don't think that they're not watching, and they want results with what they're giving us. And if we don't give them the results, then we have no one but ourselves to blame. So, thank you, and thank you all for coming.
Any other member of the committee want to comment on this agenda item? Okay, before we move on to the next item, I'll just make a quick comment in reference to the review too. You know, when you're not getting enough funding to keep the district as it is, you know, what data do you use to tell you where to cut? There never is data to tell you where to cut. And there's no data to tell you how many teachers to cut. And just so you know, one of the things we were dealing with, there was actually a study that DESE had sent out that was done at one point years ago, saying that class size didn't matter, to try to show that class size didn't matter. Well, there's also studies that, as we know, that's not true, and there's plenty of studies that say, in fact, obviously, class size does matter. So, but we
Especially at
certainly...
the lower level grades significantly.
Oh, absolutely.
Lower level grades.
Right. You know, maybe as students get older, the class size, you know, you can be a little more flexible on class size, but certainly at those lower level grades, you know, and then there's the economically disadvantaged factors, which, you know, again, was a funding factor where they stopped counting initially 4,500 of our students as economically disadvantaged. That had a huge funding impact on us. So again, you know, we're looking at that document where we are using that document to, as part of how we rebuild. We're partnering with DESE as we rebuild, but at the same time, you know, it's easy 6 years later for them to say you shoulda, you shoulda, you shoulda. Well, again, you know, we can do that too. The moral of the story is we're pushing forward, we're moving forward, and you know, we're putting back the right positions to close achievement gaps and move students forward, which is, you know, what we always strive for and do. But again, when you don't have enough teachers and enough funding for programs to do that with, it gets difficult to do. So, at any rate, okay, if there's no other comment on agenda item number 1, oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Mendez, please.
And just to add to what you're saying, I think voices like this in the community is one of our best data. So I just want to thank those that are here, but also maybe this is something that we can do on a quarterly or maybe like a more frequent basis, because the best data we're going to get is from the parents, the community members, and the people that are here today. Also, just things that keep popping up on my notes are definitely the trauma sensitive and the mental health. And that's something that I know that when Mr. Thomas was presenting, or Mike, I know you hate Mr. Thomas, but when Mike was presenting, he talked about, you know, seeing the sense, like, you know, all of a sudden we have 7th graders that are 9th graders, right? So it's like all the socio-emotional things have been magnified. Also, the D office being able to expand, that's something that the subcommittee before this subcommittee talked about, Renee Haywood, when she did, and also like being able to have trauma informed, but that knowledge of really understanding the students that are in front of us, right? Who are we serving? I really like the perspective. I never thought about ways to support parents. I think we focus a lot on students, right? But that's a conversation that I thought was like a great perspective. How do we support parents? Also, as an educator view, I think I have overlooked that. So that was like a great perspective. So again, thank you. And once again, I think they're the best data. Getting that. So hopefully we can get more of these to get this in our meetings.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I would like to remind everybody that at our regular school committee meetings, we do have the hearing of visitors as an agenda item at the full school committee meetings that happen twice a month. The public is always welcome to come, sign in, and every member of the public is given 3 minutes to speak to us. And similar to the way the format was tonight, we listen, we take all that information under advisement, and then some things, you know, we can act on. Others go to whatever subcommittee needs to act on them. But again, there is that opportunity for public comment on a regular basis that rarely folks take advantage of, but it is on our regular agenda twice a month. So, okay, anything else?
One other thing, if I could.
Yes, please.
Because I think Mrs. Mendez and you hit it on the head, but also Superintendent Thomas talked about some issues that have been going on at Brockton High, right? Serious issues, violence, and the like. So if you're a parent of a student at Brockton High, we could have Dr. Murray, the principal of the school, talk to you. I mean, he can give you a call. I mean, there's no hidden agenda here. We're all on the same team. So Superintendent Thomas and I are products of Brockton High. He's older than me, of course. I want to say that again. Just by 1 year, but nonetheless, Michael. But again, hearing and visitors is key. This is great because this is what it means to hear from the public. But if there's a parent here at any public school and you want to talk to the principal, you want to talk to me as the mayor or Mike, we're always ready, willing, and able. And I just wanted that to be captured on film tonight because it's extremely important. There are a lot of issues right now that are being addressed, but if you do have any questions, concerns, insights, suggestions, we're always ready, willing, and able to address those. Thank you.
And I appreciate you saying that, because Dr. Murray and I had a very long conversation yesterday about the steps he's taking to address those issues and calm things down at the high school. And so I think he's got a good plan in place. And but certainly, any feedback parents have on that is valued. Okay. All right, so we will move on to the next agenda item. So next is an executive session. For those who are not maybe more familiar with that, the executive session, I'm going to read a thing about going into executive session. We'll take a vote to go into executive session. And then the committee won't be returning from executive session when it's over. But there are certain times where we are, certain matters that we discuss in closed session. Most of what we do is in open session, and so that's what executive session is for, is when those matters come up. So with that, the Finance Committee will go into executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy and obtain advice of counsel with respect to potential litigation threatened by First Student, Inc. in conjunction with First Student's allegations of sums owed under the parties' contract for transportation services. The subcommittee will not return to open session following this executive session. I'm going to call the roll to go into executive session. Mr. Minicello?
Yes.
Mrs. Mendez?
Yes.
All right. D'Agostino is a yes. Mr. Rodriguez? Yes. Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Ms. Asak?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mayor Sullivan?
Yes.
Okay, we are in executive session. Thank you.